All right, shalom, everybody. It's our Acts chapter study. We're on Acts chapter 16. We're going to look at this in groups of 10. Mecca is going to start us off with the first 10 verses in Acts chapter 16. Go ahead, brother.
Give me 1 sec, pulling it up right now.
Yeah, no problem.
Acts 16. All right, Acts chapter 16, verse 1. It says, Then came he to Derbe, and Lystra, and behold, a certain Talmudim, or disciple, was there, named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Yahudi, and believed. But his father was a Yabani, which was well reported by the brethren that were at Lystra and Iconium. Him would Paul have to go forthwith, and took and circumcised him because of the Yahudim which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Yabani. And as they went through the cities, they delivered them the decrees to keep, that were ordained of the apostles and elders which were at Jerusalem. And so were the called out assemblies established in the belief, and increased in number daily. Now when they had gone throughout Phrygia, and the region of Galatia, and were forbidden of the Ruach HaKodesh to preach the word in Asia, after they were come to Mysia, they essayed to go into Bithynia, but the Ruach suffered them not. And they, passing by Mysia, came down to Troas, and a vision appeared to Paul in the night. There stood a man of Macedonia, and prayed him, saying, Come over into Macedonia, and help us. And after he had seen the vision, immediately we endeavored to go into Macedonia, assuredly gathering that Yahuah had called us for to preach the Basora unto them.
All right, brother. What do you see in there?
I definitely see, number one, the first thing I see that is, we see that who Paul is going with, Timotheus, and how he had, because of the fact that they were going to be preaching the Basora, preaching the good news to the Yahudim, that Paul had Timotheus circumcised. But it wasn't because the commandment, coming from, the Torah to be circumcised, but he knew that it was going to be a benefit to their preaching, the good news, that he had him circumcised. And so,
absolutely,
that's the first thing I see, is that it wasn't, he didn't say because of Torah, he said because of the Yahudim which were in those quarters, for they knew all that his father was a Yabani. Right. And as they went through the cities, they delivered them the decrees to keep, that were ordained of the apostles. So, and then it says, you even see as a result, it says, and so were the called out assemblies established in the belief, and increased in number daily. So this wasn't done in vain. It wasn't done in vain. It actually Paul using good discernment, it actually benefited them and they increased from it. So, praise Yah for that.
Praise Yah for being wise as serpents and gentle as doves. Like that was strategic. You know what I mean? Like they wasn't going out because they just wanted to say stuff to people. They were going out and they wanted to do what Paul preached in other books, where he says, "I am all things to all men, that I may gain some."
Yeah.
Whatever
Absolutely.
he can do, he's not compromising past Yah's commands, but whatever he can do that would allow him to reach the people that he wanted to reach, the people that he knew Yah wanted to reach, he would do those things. He wouldn't go as far as compromising, but he would do whatever it took to gain people, because he knew he was a debtor to Messiah. He owed Messiah his life. He was saved. You see what I'm saying? Yah saved him instead of destroying him, especially since he was a persecutor of Yah's people. You see what I'm saying? So that was an excellent point, because this is one of the major points that people use to prove that that circumcision is one of the weightier matters, when in actuality it just shows even more that it wasn't, and that the people who were not viewing things correctly, you could go back to Acts chapter 15 and see that they were not viewing things correctly, that was the only reason why he was circumcised, in order to gain those who were not viewing things correctly. So no, that's an excellent point that you brought out. There was also points of the Ruach stopping them from going into certain places. The Spirit stopping them from going into certain areas. I think sometimes we're so messed up, man. We're so messed up because of the desensitized places that we've been, whether it be the world or whether it be the religious organizations that people used to be from. Either way, there's this insecurity that we have of ourselves, where if we're moved by the Ruach, or if the Ruach tells us not to do certain things, we're like, nah, but Yah wants us to preach to everybody, right? And it's just like, we don't recognize that Yah has a certain timing as to when individuals will receive his word. You see what I'm saying? Just like Messiah.
Yeah.
When Messiah was preaching, he didn't tell everybody to go tell everybody. There was some people he told not to say anything. You see what I'm saying? And the people who would try to blow him up and say, "Oh, you're the son of the Most High," he would cast out demons out of them so they won't finish their declaration. So there was times in which it was not beneficial to reveal certain things. So we need to be very in tune with the Ruach, very in tune with the Spirit as to how he wants us to reveal these things. A lot of times we say, "Oh no, the Spirit don't want me to do this," because you're afraid. The Spirit don't make you afraid. You see what I'm saying? The Spirit does not give you a spirit of fear. So just because you're afraid and nervous doesn't mean that that's the Spirit telling you not to do something. You see what I'm saying? So we need to be very clear as to what his voice sounds like, what the moving of his Spirit feels like, rather than just giving in to our own emotions and saying, "Oh, because I'm fired up, that's righteous indignation." Like, no. "Oh, because I'm scared, that's Yah telling me not to do it." No. We need to not give Yah credit over our fear, our being scared or fearfulness. You know what I mean? So I love the fact that these people were so trusting in Yah and in tune with the moving of his Ruach, that they were able to notice when Yah didn't want them to go certain places, and they waited on Yah, because we see that in verse 9 that Yah gave him a specific vision, a clear vision with an understanding to go deliver the word to a certain person in Macedonia. So we need to get back to that trust. We need to get back to that dependency and that waiting on Yah to move us, rather than us just moving ourselves. All right, that's pretty much The gist of this first 10. Let me read the next 10 verses. Verse 11 of Acts chapter 16. It says, "Therefore, loosing from Trios, we came with a straight course to Samothracia, Rakia, and the next day to Neapolis, and from there to Philippi, which is the chief city of that part of Macedonia and a colony. And we were in the city abiding certain days. On the Shabbat, we went out of the city by the riverside, where prayer was given and made. And we sat down and spake to the women which stayed there. And a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple in the city of Thyatira." Thyatira is one of those churches from Revelation. So it's one of those assemblies. From the city of Thyatira, which worshipped Elohim, heard, whose mind the master opened, and she attended unto the things which were spoken of by Paul. When she was immersed, she and her household, she sought us, saying, If you have judged me to be faithful to the master, come into my house and stay there. And she constrained us. And it came to pass, as we went to pray, a certain damsel possessed with the spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. This is interesting here. And the same followed Paul and us and cried, saying, or yelling, saying, These men are the servants of the Most High Elohim, which showed us the way of salvation. And this did she many days, but Paul, being grieved, in some translations it says annoyed, being grieved, turned and said to the spirit, I command you in the name of Yahusha the Messiah to come out of her. And he came out that same hour. And when her masters saw that the hope of their gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas, drew them into the marketplace unto the rulers, and brought them to the magistrates, saying, These men, being Yahudim or Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city. I want to read verse 21 as well. It says, And teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. Woo! Ooh, wait, watch this.
Oh my goodness.
So besides the travel, there's a lot here. Besides the travel to all the different cities, on the Shabbat, he shows another method in spending the Shabbat. They didn't go to the synagogue every single Shabbat. They didn't put their, read the Torah every single minute of the Shabbat. I'm pretty sure they read the Torah. I'm pretty sure they read scriptures and sang and did those things. But look at what they're doing. They're going by the river. They're spending time by the river to pray, to enjoy the creation, enjoy the things that Yah has made. And in turn, they got opportunities as they enjoy nature to speak about Yah. There's been many times where I'll go by a river or I'll go to a park, I'll take my kids somewhere, and I end up in a conversation about Yah to somebody that's there already. You know what I mean? So it's amazing to just spend your time just enjoying Yah, rather than forcing yourself to just sit inside, a box or apartment and just read and not actually go outside to see the things that he's talking about in his word. You know what I mean? Lydia. The scripture talk about Lydia a little bit. I think Paul wrote a letter and mentioned Lydia as being a faithful woman in Yah, older woman. Now, look at the demon, right? The demon from verse 16. So, does anybody have a different translation for the verse 16? What version you have?
The Sefer. It says, And it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with a ruach of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul. Yeah.
So this was a demon that like a fortune telling demon that individuals used. It's crazy because individuals not possessed by demons used an individual possessed by demons to make money by saying certain things to others, and she started to follow Paul around, and she ain't saying no lie. She ain't trying to deceive nothing. She says in verse 17, "These men are the servants of the Most High Elohim, which show unto us the way of salvation." This is pretty crazy. A demon-possessed girl speaking the truth. You see what I'm saying? We got it kind of, you know, like the movies. We think that demon possession is like what they show on TV. But demons can say the truth in order to deceive. You see what I'm saying? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think personally, I think she wasn't declaring it as a fact. I see it more as she was mocking them, which is why Paul was grieved by it. But to comment on verse 16, in reality, this really is what we do see in a lot of religious organizations today, especially like these mega churches. But I mean, not even just Christian religious churches, but other religions where they teach profit. They teach gain, and you claim it, name it and claim it stuff, and just all this other stuff where it's like they actually do grow wealth. I mean, look at these facilities, like, and look at these people. They're millionaires. They are obtaining much wealth, just as verse 16 those men were. But we see that in this verse, it was done by a demon-possessed woman, or by a spirit. Right. So it's like, the fact that these people aren't teaching the true word of Yah, and they're using people, this verse for me clarifies where they're getting their wealth from.
Right. I like that you mentioned that, because when you see verse, verse 16, verse 16, where it says that they made money by soothsaying. I'm gonna see if I could get the meaning of that word real quick. Soothsaying.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
So it says to act as a seer, or deliver an oracle, prophecy, or to deliver something divine. To utter spells. Yeah, stuff like that.
Right. So to utter spells, it says to divine or prophesy, right? To tell like a future. And like you mentioned about these mega churches, like they're like motivational speakers. They professing to speak these it's like spells, kind of. When you're like, speak over your bank account, and believe that it will grow to $10,000. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's like they're speaking these prophecies over money, over.
You just made me think of something else.
Huh?
You just made me, wow, yeah, you just made me think of something else to add to that too. Also, we know true sacrifices is of the heart, the mind. He wants the sacrifices, but to come from the mind. But just like these people do those spells and stuff, like pray, or like claim this over your bank account, or over your finances, over your wallet, whatever. They also have you give sacrifices, which they trick you into believing. Right. So you're literally making strange fire. You're literally making strange sacrifices.
Right. Offerings that Yah never asked you to offer.
Exactly.
But that was definitely a good point, bringing that comparison up, because it's crazy. I never looked at it that way because this is a more ancient time, but it's the same. It's the same. It's whatever has been will be. There's nothing new under the sun. So the way that these demons are functioning here, they may be more elaborate now, but it's the same spirit. It's the same wicked inspiration. Go ahead, brother Donald.
Yes. Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Uh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yes. Anyways, if you have a false prophet that's prophesying, which they be, they be prophet lying to people, that's an automatic demon right there, because everything that's false prophecy and prophesying to people comes from Hashatan himself anyway, because the Most High is not going to have you false prophesying to his people. So that's demonized right there.
Right. Well, the thing is, Yah has equipped us. Yah has equipped us with everything that we need in order to verify a false prophet. Like check this verse out. Let's check this verse out. Let's go to 1 John. But you're absolutely right. Yah's not going to allow his people to be deceived. Yah doesn't allow people to be deceived, even though he allows false prophets to speak. It doesn't mean that he's allowing us to give in to the false prophets. Look at 1 John chapter 4. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. It says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of Elohim, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." So he's telling us to test the spirits to make sure they are from Elohim. So whether they're from Elohim, whether not from Elohim, he's telling us to test it. And he's given us everything to test it. When you look at Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20, it says, "To the Torah and to the Tanakh," or to the Torah and to the testimony, "if any man speaks not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them." So we have everything that we need to test false prophets or even true prophets. But what's happening is that individuals don't test. They don't challenge to see if it's according to scripture. What they do is they give in because it sounds like it makes sense. And we shouldn't do that at all. Even if you trust the person, you should still test the words that the individuals say Yah is saying. So once they say this is what Yah wants, you say, okay, we're friends, we're walking together, but where does it say that? You know what I mean?
Right.
We need to prove one another so we can be, be on our toes. Because when we go out into the world, we're gonna have to defend the faith. We're gonna have to contend for the faith, as the book of Jude says. But you're right. Yah is not gonna allow anyone who is submitted to the Ruach to be deceived. If we test it the way that he says to test it, he's going to reveal to us that it's a lie.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Amen. Go ahead, brother Mike.
All right, so I just found something cool. So we see, if I'm not mistaken, it mentioned the beginning of what you were reading that they went to Philippi, right? Okay, check this out. So look at what the lady was saying. She said, because I'm not on that verse, so can you read what she was saying, what she was declaring as she followed them, verse 17?
She said, "These men are the servants of the Most High Elohim, which show unto us the way of salvation."
Okay, and it says that it grieved or it troubled or vexed, whatever word you want to put there. It grieved.
It says that she did that. She did that. It says that she did that many days. And it says, "But Paul, being grieved, turned and said to the spirit, I command you in the name of Yahusha to come out of her."
Who wrote the book of Philippians? Paul, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah. So check this out. So he was just in Philippi, and this lady's following them, saying, "These are the men of the Most High Yah who show us the way of salvation." And look what Paul writes to those same people. This is Philippians 2:12. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have also obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling.
Mm,
So that's kind of contradicting what the Spirit was saying, because the Spirit was saying these men show us the way of salvation, but Paul says no, walk out your own salvation with fear and trembling, which could be why he was grieved.
mm. Well, I can see why you say that. I can see that perspective. But it's kind of like, when you go tell somebody the truth, you're kind of showing them the way to salvation. You're not giving them salvation, but you are showing them the way. You see what I'm saying? To show the
Yeah.
way is different from giving. It says that Messiah is the giver of eternal salvation, but we
Which
just show the way.
I
Huh?
thought that, but I feel like that there had to be some other intent for him, because if what she's saying is in that context, I don't see why it would have grieved him. And in fact, if the Spirit is saying solely truth, then that would make it a truth prophecy, which therefore would make it from Yah. So something that she's saying has to be incorrect for it to grieve him and for him to cast it out, because he's not going to cast out
Well,
a
it's
spirit
not
prophesying.
necessarily, because we just saw this in the book of Mark. We saw how they were saying, "You're the Son of the Most High. You're the Son of the Most High Yah, and Messiah will cast these demons out." When they would say true statements like, "You're the Son of the Most High Yah," it's a matter of when those things should be revealed. It's kind of like Yah has a certain timing. Later on in this chapter, you're gonna see that there were individuals or magistrates. I just read a little bit of it in verse 20 and 21, that there were certain Jews and magistrates that were in that city that messed up that whole situation of him preaching there, because they went to them. So there were certain things that Yah didn't want to just broadcast, because it would hinder what's going on. And it happened with Messiah multiple times. Hey, you're the Son of the Most High Yah. That's not a lie. That's not a
Yeah.
lie. And there was many times he said not to go tell nobody. And then there was other times where he told certain people to go tell somebody. So I think there's a difference between Yah and ordaining someone to go tell somebody and then some demon just exposing you before the time. So
Yeah,
I think
I
that
can see
with
that.
us, you see what I'm saying? Like if you go into a church and somebody's like, "Oh, this is the preacher man, this is the preacher man," people's ears are gonna be up and they're gonna be looking at you like, "Okay, what you can tell us about?" I've it's crazy. I've been in situations like that. I've never attributed to demons, but I've been to like places where it'd be like, "Oh, John's here, he's gonna say this," and so people automatically got their guards up right away, man. And I could say whatever I could say, I could agree with them, and it's like they're not hearing it. You see what I'm saying? Because they're already
Yeah.
on guard. You see, so I mean that's just my experience, and I noticed that I had to actually tell people it's crazy. I've never attributed to like demonic inspiration, like Satan trying to hinder something by saying something true ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
No, I can see it like that now. I can see that way too. Is that is actually what they're doing, and then now, and when he writes to the Philippians, he's not there at that point that's why he's writing the letter to them. So he must have shown them the way to salvation, and now he's telling them to walk in it.
right.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
watch, you'll see when we continue. Yeah.
No, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say when we continue, you're gonna see something crazy. How that connects with blowing them up.
All right. Yeah. The other thing was I think it's crazy the reaction. So when the spirits cast out of her, it says, and when her master saw that the hope of their gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas and drew them up in the marketplace unto the rulers and brought them to the magistrates, saying, These men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. So it's just crazy because I can see this as a foreshadow of the end time too, whenever Yah's people, again, doing his will and straightening the way, right? Straightening the way,
Right.
shining light and revealing darkness. And then these people's evil deeds be revealed, just like the scribes and Pharisees. And then when they kill Yahusha, and just like Yahusha told us, like they're gonna want to kill us too, because it's the same light. We're gonna end up. We're supposed to be doing the same thing he did, which is, shining the light, which is again uncovering their darkness, and then it's gonna anger them because the hope of their wealth and everything that they believe in, everything that they're after, is being taken from them, and it's going to cause them to come after us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Truth stops error. So if you people are making money from error, and anybody who receives truth is going to stop someone else from receiving, whether it be, sometimes it's personal stuff. Sometimes you talk to a couple, you teach them about fornication, one of them wants to stop, now the other one is mad. You see what I'm saying? It's like truth hinders wickedness from continuing. When somebody receives truth, it hinders the wickedness that another person gains from it. In this instance is demonic possession and some type of psychic reading or something like that. Go ahead, Emeka.
Yeah, to pretty much move on to exactly what it's bringing us to this point is that you look in verse 20 and 21, it says I'll start at 19. It says, and when her master saw the hope of their gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas and drew them into the marketplace unto the rulers, and brought them unto the magistrates, saying, These men, being Yahudim, do exceedingly trouble our city, and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans, basically. And so, it's very interesting because, like exactly what you just said, when you have this truth coming, and this light coming, and it's shining light on a dark place, those that walk in corruption, immediately they're offended. And even to the point where we see here in verse 21, it says, and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. So it was unlawful for them to teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe. So they, being Romans, they couldn't learn the customs or observe them. Now, it's very interesting. Just a couple points. Number one is when you look at it just my point just left my head. All right, well, at least the other point, when you look at the Romans and you look at how today, right, in the church, the Roman Catholic Church, which we know has a huge influence on Christianity, a lot of the things that we see here are actually, a lot of the commandments we're told to observe are actually excluded. And what's one of the biggest things that you hear coming out of Christianity, or in the Roman Catholic? The laws are done away with. We don't have to keep those laws. We don't have to, we don't have to obey those laws. They're a burden. They're a yoke. All this stuff. And it's like, hold on. It was already, and it's not like because we're in a different age, like the same rulership doesn't have effect. These are the same people that are leading the Roman Catholic Church are the descendants of the same people who were leading it back then. So they would obviously be trying to keep the same customs they had back then, which would be making it unlawful for people to follow the customs of the Yahudim or the Jews. you know, and we can see that even today. And you look at Christianity, you look at Catholicism, we see those things. They're doing things that are contrary to the word of Yah, to his commandments, you know, to the things that he wants us to do. And they're saying, like, even in our city, it's unlawful for, you know, us to learn and observe, not just learn, but and observe these things. So even in today's society, knowing how influenced and controlled it is by the Roman Empire, it's still the same thing. To them, this is unlawful, which is why you have a lot of pastors telling you, oh, if you start to obey law, you're going to go to hell, because they just don't want you to obey the law, because deep down it's against their own custom, because they know, number one, you know, to go back to the earlier point, you can't be a soothsayer. You can't be one of these fake prophetess up in these churches, these mega churches, and this and that, or this church over here, and you just prophesying, you know, oh no, we're just, you know, oh no, I see blessings coming in, I see money coming into your account, you know, receive it. You know what I'm saying? Like, all you got to do is receive it, you know, and like throwing all these false prophecies out there, and, you know, soothsaying the people, sweet talking the people, telling them what they want to hear, what tickles their ear, but at the same time, you know, there's no real substance to it. There's no real truth to it. You know, it's like when Shaul said, you know, who has be with you, you know, Galatians, who has be with you that you should not obey the truth, you know? And so, you know, it's like these people are being bewitched in order to keep this in line, exactly what it says in verse 21, you know, these are, you know, customs which are not lawful to receive, you know, or to observe, you know. And then my second point came back to me. My second point was, you know, you always hear people speak about how, you know, Shaul says, you know, they talk about how he says, you know, I am, well, how they interpret it is, when in Rome, you know, do as the Romans, right? That's how they try to interpret Paul's words when he says, you know, I'm weak for the weak, or I'm strong for the strong, or I am all things to all people. They try to interpret it as he's saying, yeah, like, do what they do. But you can even see right here, he's like, yeah, no, hold up. This comes first. Right. So, like, we're pushing the truth first, and it doesn't matter where we go, even if it's against their own customs, which I'm absolutely 100% sure Paul, of all people, would have known it was illegal to go to Rome and start preaching the Besorah, preaching the customs of the Yahudim. Paul, who said he was a citizen of Rome himself, would have known you don't do this in Rome. So he's in Rome teaching customs that are against the Roman Empire, and he knows it, and he's still out there doing it. You know, it just shows you, like, you know, how much people misinterpret and misunderstand, or just don't have they don't have understanding of the book. You know, they're not discerning these things of the word, and how, when you break that down, you see how they are going against the grain. It's not, when I'm in Rome, I do as the Romans, because I bet you if the Romans started drinking blood, he's going to be like, nope, I'm good. We don't do that. You know, we don't do that. So, you know, just those few things stuck out to me, man. I thought it was crucial. That was very, very important.
Right. Now, you pointed out a verse that I wanted to definitely touch on, man. Look at verse 19 to 21. It says, when her masters saw that the hope of the gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas, and they took them to the marketplace, to the rulers. They brought them to the magistrates, saying, these men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city, and teach, talking about Paul and Silas, are teaching customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans. So when you look at what Paul and Silas teach, what customs are they going to Pharisees and Sadducees saying it's unlawful for them to keep. One, Romans are not circumcised. So according to the Pharisees and Sadducees, which we read in Acts 15, it's unlawful for them to keep any of the Torah, especially for salvation. So when we're looking at the customs that they are calling customs, right? And look at who they're talking to. They're talking to these they're talking to the leadership of that town. Now, Mike brought up that they were also in Philippi, which we see in verse 12. Real quick, Acts chapter 20, verse 6. Acts chapter 20, verse 6. It says, we sailed away from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread and came to them to Troas in 5 days, where we abode 7 days. So it says here that in Philippi, after the Passover unleavened bread was over, then they left. Right? So when he's in Philippi, he's teaching them to keep certain things that the other Jews deem it unlawful because they're Roman. All Paul was telling them to do was keep Torah, but we know that according to verse 15, that the Gentiles, according to the Pharisees and Sadducees, must be circumcised, or it's unlawful for them to keep anything that Yah says, especially Passover and unleavened bread at Philippi. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of blew my mind when it showed that they saw them preaching the way, right? The way to salvation. And then they got upset because they wasn't making no money, and they took them to the rulers and said they're teaching stuff that we're not supposed to know, that we're not supposed to follow. It was, you see what I'm saying? So when we're looking at what they were teaching, they were actually teaching the Torah. They were actually teaching them the Torah, and these Roman individuals refer to them as customs that's not lawful for us to keep because we're Roman. You see? That's the theme throughout the book of Acts, especially when it comes to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. These Gentiles are not supposed to be doing certain things because they are not circumcised. Matter of fact, we started the chapter with him circumcising Timothy for that very reason of avoiding the judgment of the Yahudim, of the children of Judah. You see what I'm saying? So the customs that Paul was teaching them to do, that they started to complain to the rulers was unlawful for them to do, was the Torah, was the feast.
You know what's interesting is that you now that you say that, I mean, even going back to my point earlier, what do you see or hear a lot? Because I mean, when I went out to Georgia and I was talking to a lot of pastors, you know, the pastors that I did talk to, and we had discussions. Oh, you know, well, we're Gentiles. We're not required to keep those things.
Right.
I'm telling you, no, it's the same argument even till today.
Right. But not really.
Wow.
It's only an argument when you mess up their situation. When you're teaching in these places, nobody says anything about anything until you start to take away the power that they have. When people start to move away from their teaching, that's when they come up with, yeah, the law is for the Jews only. That only they supposed to do. We're not supposed to do it. This is the same argument that he's bringing up. When he didn't say anything until he lost money. When he lost money, he's like, oh, snap. Nah, we're not supposed to know this stuff. Get out of here. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing that happens now. When people start to move away from their authority and they go to the truth, Now they're like, oh, how can I get this person to stay? Oh, the law is done away with. The law is nailed to the cross. The law is this. The law is that. Oh no, we don't keep the feast. They were all nailed to the cross. They were all fulfilled in Messiah. All of these things, because and then they planted on a custom of the Jews instead of saying this is Yah's law, Yah's instruction for all man. You see what I'm saying? So this is what's happening here. It's the same argument. They saw that they lost money. They took him to the rulers. They said, this guy is messing with our city. He's teaching us to do stuff that we're not even supposed to do because we're Roman. You know, that's the same thing people do. Oh, stop teaching us about the law. We're Christian. You know? So it's very interesting because, you know, when you look at it, you'll see what you can see what Paul is teaching throughout the whole scripture. He's teaching Torah. In Romans chapter 10, he says clearly, he quotes Deuteronomy chapter 30 and says, this is what we preach. So when we're here in Romans, Romans chapter 10, he quotes Moses, right? Romans chapter 10, he quotes Moses in Deuteronomy 30 and says, this is what we preach. You have here these Romans saying he's teaching us to do things we're not supposed to do. He's teaching Torah. He's teaching Torah, and only when the people was losing money, that's when they brought him to the rulers. Now, when they brought him to the rulers, like me and Mike was talking about earlier, this is how it stopped their whole situation. Because now the rulers of that city found out. And watch what happens when everybody finds out what they're doing. See, it wasn't supposed to be just broadcast like the demon was doing. The demon was broadcasting what they were there to do. But it wasn't supposed to be broadcast because there were certain rulers in that town that was going to hinder his work. I'm going to read verse 22 to 30. I'm going to read verse 22 to 30. And it says, well, after he told them that, you know, it's unlawful for us to learn, it says in verse 22, Acts 16, starting from verse 22, it says, and the multitude rose up together against them, and the magistrates ripped off their clothes and commanded to beat them. When they had laid down many stripes on them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely, who, having received such a charge, threw them into the inner prison and made their feet fast with the stocks, or put fetters on, you know, on their feet. And at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises to Elohim, and the prisoners heard them. Suddenly, there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prisons were shaken, and immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bands were loosed. The keeper of the prison woke up out of his sleep, and he saw the prison doors open. He drew his sword to kill himself, because he thought that the prisoners ran away. Paul cried with a loud voice and said, do not harm yourself. We're all here. Then he called for a light and sprang in, and came trembling, and fell down before Paul and Silas. And he brought them out and said, sirs, what must I do to be saved? This is crazy. This is crazy. Let me let you guys go first. Anybody have anything to say about anything? It could be about what if I overlooked you guys from the last couple verses, or from these verses. Anybody have anything to say about these verses? All right, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, you know, verse 25, you know, to me to me is very important, because, you know, as we've been talking about prayer and talking about the watches of the night, you know, verse 25 says, and at midnight, you know, Paul and Silas prayed, saying praises unto Yahuah, and the prisoners heard them. You know, so it's like just going back to these hours, you know, and It's like when most people are sleeping, you know, and you know, you have Yahusha who was praying through the night, you know, seeing these things and how the Ruach moves during these time periods. And, you know, even, you know, Yahusha, after he went up away from the disciples and sent the multitude away, and he went out to pray in the mountain by himself, and he comes back and he's walking on water, and they're like, whoa, you know, it's like, you see, you know, these times, it's like there's something very, very special about these hours, you know, during the night.
And you know, this destroys that whole concept where it talks about we are not children of the night. It's not talking about people don't do stuff at night. It's talking specifically spiritually about mental darkness or walking in darkness. So, like absolutely. You said, Messiah praying at midnight, the disciples praying at midnight, Paul praying at midnight. You see what I'm saying? Like this, I think I read a passage in the book of Psalms showing that even in the sanctuary, there were individuals that stand in the sanctuary at night and pray and serve Yah at night. So, night is not to be neglected as a time to also serve Yah. You know, and I think a lot of times because of certain doctrines that's out there flowing, people disregard the nighttime as if it's not important, as if it's just a time frame in which nothing occurs. When in actuality, a lot happens. A lot throughout Scripture, a lot happens at night. Yeah, no, absolutely. When you said that, I remembered what our study on Friday, the book of Mark, where Messiah was praying all night, and right after that, he's walking on water, like you said. And here, they're praying and singing praises to Elohim, and the earthquake opens up all the gates in the prison. Like, you know, I'm gonna start praying at midnight.
I know, man. This got me fired up. This getting me fired up, man. Real talk, man. Praise Yah.
I think Brother Donald also mentioned something about the night watches, and I remember we were talking, and a lot of times when I would look back, I mean, you don't really notice it when I look back. I notice a lot of times that Yah revealed things to me. It was at night, like I couldn't sleep, and I picked up the word, and he showed me something, and then he confirmed it when other people were seeing it, when other people was studying and seeing it themselves. So, you know, it's crazy. When I look back, I see a lot of times at night things was revealed to me as well in my life, and in my study as well. So everything opened up. Roman was like, yo, how can I be saved? This is the Roman guard now. It's the Roman guard, not a dispersed Yahudim, by the way, a dispersed Israelite from one of the tribes. No, he's not part-time a Roman soldier. So this is a Roman soldier in verse 30 saying, what must I do to be saved? Verse 31. I'm going to read verse 31 down to 40. It says, and they said, believe on the Master Yahushua the Messiah, and you shall be saved, and your house, and your family. And they spake unto him the word of the Master, and to all that were in his house. His family came down to the jail. All right, let me keep reading. It says, and he took them the same hour of the night, and he washed their stripes and was immersed, he and all of his straightway. So then he took them. The Roman soldier took Paul and Silas and cleaned them off from all the blood that was probably dripping off of their backs when they were whipped and beaten with rods or whatever. Probably extremely repentant, because he's probably one of the dudes that did it. And him and his whole family, him and his whole house was immersed. Verse 34, it says, and when he had brought them into his house, a Roman, he set food in front of them and rejoiced, believing in Elohim with all his house. This is probably connected to that Romans 14 verse, Mike. where it talks about the food being put in front of you. It says in verse 35, and when it was day, the magistrates sent the sergeant, saying, let those men go. And the keeper of the prison told this, saying to Paul, and the magistrates have sent to let you go. So therefore, leave and go in peace. Paul said to them, they have beaten us openly, uncondemned, being Romans, and have cast us into prison. So he's referring to himself being a Roman citizen, like Mecca mentioned earlier. It says, now do they thrust us out secretly? He said, nah. I know it says nay, it says nah. Verily, but let them come themselves and take us out. And the sergeants told these words to the magistrates, and they were afraid when they heard that they were Romans, that they were Roman citizens. And they came and they looked for them, and they brought them out, and they desired for them to leave out of the city. And they went out of the prison and entered into Lydia's house. And when they had seen the brethren, they comforted them, and they departed. This is crazy. Earthquake happened, doors open in the gates. Paul is like, nah, you come yourself. Don't send no messengers. You come yourself and you get me out. You see the crazy thing, how real traditional and they people convict themselves of the whole Hebrew idea, Hebrew movement. This dude is using the fact that he's a Roman citizen. He's using the fact that he's a Roman citizen to be able to do certain things. You see what I'm saying? Many people who think they're in this walk so consumed with themselves that they don't see like a bigger picture. They don't see a bigger picture of how to reach the world. These are Roman soldiers being saved. They're not dispersed of Israel working as Roman soldiers. These are Romans asking to be saved and accepting the Messiah as their own. You see what I'm saying? Whole families, whole Roman families being converted. And then Paul using his Roman citizenship in order to gain more access to deliver the word to more people. We need to broaden our mindset as far as restricting ourselves. A lot of times we convict ourselves of stuff that Yah is not even telling us to do. Oh yeah, I'm not going to mention that I'm a Roman citizen, or I'm not going to mention that I'm an American citizen because, we don't serve this nation because this nation is beast. And like, yeah, Rome is the worst. Rome is the beast. Rome is the beast of Daniel 7. Like, they knew that. You see what I'm saying? But he was using whatever he needed to do in order to gain an opportunity to do more. We need to do the same thing. Stop limiting ourselves and convicting ourselves of stuff that Yah is not even convicting you of. Don't say it's the Ruach because you have some type of strange feeling. Say it's the Ruach because the word confirms what you're feeling or what you're thinking, not feeling. If the word confirms what you're thinking, then it's from the Ruach. If you're just feeling some type of feeling, don't say the Ruach is moving you to do anything. The Ruach don't work through feelings. He works through thoughts, intellectual. Yah is intellectual. Hasatan is emotional. Go ahead, Emeka.
Yeah, it's very interesting too because there's that verse in Matthew chapter 5, I believe it's verse 16. And it says, he basically says, let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and they glorify your Father in heaven. And before that, he says, you are the light, of the world, and so you see that right here. I mean, you see, Paul and Silas basically worshiping Yahuah, showing them that it's not just about us going out and talking.
Absolutely.
This is what we do. You know, this is how we live. This is the Father that we praise to, and the one that we trust. We put our all into. You know, we put all of our faith and trust into Him. You know, even in these dark times when you're looking at us, probably like, yo, we're just beaten, bruised up, like y'all thrown in jail, and like you're probably looking at them like, you guys went to jail for just to talk about, you know what I'm saying, your God, you know, or your mighty one, your Elohim, like y'all did all this and look where it got you, you know. And then what do? Knowing, okay, this, we know we're gonna suffer for this, but hey, let's do what we do, you know. Let's praise Yah and give Him all the glory, you know, and praise Him and sing to Him, and then what happens now that that's happened? Now Yahuwah's like, yo, look at everything they went through, and now watch this, watch what I'm gonna do, you know. And then you look at the reaction from the guard. Him seeing that, I'm sure when they probably started singing, he was probably awake. They probably sang him to sleep. He was probably awake listening. He probably fell asleep like, man, these dudes is tripping. Big earthquake hit. Huh? What? Oh, snap. Oh, all the doors is open? Wait, all the doors is open? They singing, all the doors is open now? And this earthquake? Hold up. Man, I'm about to just end myself, because I know don't do it, bro. We're all here. And he's like, oh my goodness, they didn't touch the locks. They didn't run out. They didn't, you know what I'm saying? They stayed true to their characters.
You know what they did? He took them home and then took them back. He took them home so he could clean them off and immerse his whole family, then brought them back. You see what I'm saying? Like, where does it say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's verse. That's verse 34.
34, right? And when he had brought them into his house, right, and then he gave them food, and they rejoiced. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy, man. That's what we need to emphasize. That's how it looks. It doesn't look at us like us screaming at people, making them realize how much they're gonna get it. You see what I'm saying? No.
Yeah.
We don't have to scream at nobody, telling nobody they're gonna get it. We're trying to save people. We're trying to show them the way to salvation. We're not trying to get people destroyed. You see what I'm saying? Paul could have been like, yo, you Romans are gonna get destroyed. He could have did that and been right. But he was more concerned with saving the Romans. It's crazy, man.
Absolutely. And you know, that ties into, you know, it ties back into Peter's vision. You know, don't call common what Yah has cleansed, you know.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, don't call these people who the Father is drawing to Him, because in that moment, the Father knows when this earthquake happens, He and His whole family is going to turn to me. Abba already knew that. He already knew it. Like, yo, as soon as this earthquake happens, I'm getting him and his whole family. Like, straight up, you know. And that's why it's so important. Like, when I link it back to that Matthew chapter 5, is let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Because now, by them doing what they did, not only did he see salvation, just looking at eternal life, but he saw instant salvation for these men who were in prison. He saw salvation for these men who were in prison right there on the spot. And he's like, yo, your Elohim does that?
Right.
Your Elohim breaking open prison doors? Oh, hold up, bro. What do I got to do? What do I got to do to be saved?
Right.
Man, praise Yah, man. Praise Yah.
And his mind is in the right place. He's asking the right questions. What can I do to be saved? What can I do to receive this salvation that you was trying to teach to these dudes that they started complaining about? Remember, they know why they're in jail. They're in jail because these dudes said he's teaching us stuff that we're not supposed to know, being Roman. You see? So they know why he's in jail. And now he saw all of this one, he saw the humility and the singing and the praising and the worshiping that they were doing. He probably heard their prayers, Father, deliver us. And he's like, how can I be delivered? You know what I mean? It's just amazing when I see the things that we're supposed to be doing. It just makes me like, yo, I'm doing this. I'm doing this tomorrow. Like, I'm going to be worshiping, I'm going to be praying, I'm going to be doing his will, doing his work. And it just gets me fired up to see how involved Yah is with his people. He opened the gates and Yah moved them not to go nowhere. He opened the gates to show that I can do whatever I want to do. Like he allowed them to be beaten and thrown in prison just for you. I opened the gates and they're still there just for you. You see how personal Yah is, man? Just for this Roman family, just for the prisoners that was there. He said, you know what? I'm going to allow this to happen. And sometimes we look at the situation because it's harmful to us. It hurts us. But Yah already built us up to deal with certain pain that we go through. So he built up Paul and Silas to go through this situation in order for him to use them to save a whole prisoners and officers. We need to look past our situation and see that our situation is there so that way someone else, so Yah could be glorified and someone else can see and come to him. You know, we're so caught up a lot of times in our own situation that we're not seeing that Yah is putting us in a position to preach the word to someone else. To preach that you're going through a situation so that person can also have the same faith that you're having. But instead we complain and murmur. We lose faith when situations happen, and then the people around look at us like, oh yeah, so you serve God when everything is all good. When everything is all bad, you complaining. Not only you complaining, but then you bringing that over here to somebody in the world that don't follow your God. You see what I'm saying? Like, we have a big responsibility to demonstrate or to represent Yah and his son on this earth the correct way. And he's given us a clear picture of what that looks like in the book of Acts and you know, in the scriptures, period. In Exodus and Genesis, he's given us a clear view of what walking with Yah looks like. And we're trying to create some type of new age, modern way of walking with him. Now, we need to go back to the primitive old ways. We need to go ask for the old paths, like Jeremiah 6:16 said. Ask for the old paths and walk in that. We need to stop looking for a better way, a new way, our way, a modern way, a more recent way of following Yah. We need to go back to the old ways and follow him very simply, very straightforward. Praise him, worship him, sing. In jail, at work, at home, outside, at the mall, whatever. Let it come out of you. Let that light come out of you and get them. Let the people see it so they can say, oh, that's who you worshiping? What can I do to be saved? You know, so sorry, I was getting too hyped. All right.
Nah, hallelujah.
So,
that was good, brother. That was good. that was right on point.
Hallelujah. All right, so this basically concludes our Acts chapter 16 studies. Shalom, everybody. See you next week.
Shalom, everybody.